over today. So with that, I'll get started and turn it over to Jim. Jim, you want to comment? I said 4 pillars, but I knew that there were 5. We've added a pillar, and do you want to comment on that? I will say the goal today is that we agree on the pillars and we agree on the targets, or if we have questions, we give some questions. And then the tactics are there for us if there's anything significantly a question mark, but really the tactics are the teams, how they're going to do it, and our board responsibility is what are we going to do and when will we accomplish it. So, and I really do appreciate you putting the risk assessment in it. Jeff and I had a brief conversation before. That's very helpful. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Jim. You want to walk through the pillars and maybe pause and make sure we've got consensus there.
Yes, and I'll just preface, this is obviously still a work in progress. It's a dynamic document. I reassured my team that there'll be changes after today. There'll be more changes going into Monday, and certainly more adjustments that we'll make after the Monday retreat. And we'll probably be making adjustments and tweaks and getting language and things right up until it comes to the board. But I'm grateful to have the opportunity in the retreat and this meeting to position us so that we're well positioned by the time everyone's asked to weigh in formally to support it. So one of the things that we've changed, I didn't create a task force to take a look at it, and I've added it for consideration. And it's the last one is increased investment in our people. I'll start with that one and then I'll work my way back since that's a new thought. We certainly heard that through the listening tours. So as we took a look at the strategic issues facing the institution, it was done in a very positive way, but we know that we're in a competitive environment. Even as I've been around in Richmond, everyone agrees we need to figure out ways to pay people to have the right talent. We put a lot of focus on buildings, but when it comes right down to it, we all know it's our people that are absolutely the most important part of making sure our students have the best experiences. There aren't specific dollar assessments on this. This is a statement to the campus that as we work hard to achieve more, that we're also working to make sure that we appreciate them and that we retain and attract the best faculty and staff possible to deliver that. We're going to be asking a lot of our people, and knowing that we've got their back is extraordinarily important, and it's in our best interest. And most importantly, the single lens is it good for students? And the answer is it is. Some of the things will be challenging because as we go into the plan, I'm going to be taking a different look at staffing, try to create more student work opportunities in these frontline positions. Areas where we struggle to retain people, I'd like to consolidate the number we have, replace with student workers, and then pay, say, frontline groundskeepers quite a bit more to be mentors and supervisors of student workforce. It's also a funding mechanism if we're able to do that, because we save 50 to 60% of the salary, particularly for frontline workers, is in the employee benefits portion and health insurance, which have gone up significantly. I have more color commentary on that I can share with the board during the retreat as to why that's important. We felt it was important that as we ask our faculty and staff to frankly do more, be more innovative, get outside their comfort zone, that we also have their back. I'll go back to the top and then I'll be happy to answer questions about that one as well as any of the other ones. Excuse me while I put my cheaters on.
And Jim, I think we agreed to the other ones. I don't know that there's any that much significant changes.
All right.
And so I'm wondering, does anyone have a question about the other pillars or something in the wording?
I do actually, Terry, if I may.
Okay.
And honestly, I should have noticed this before, so I apologize. But talk to me a little bit about the difference in your mind between, I'm focused on number 3, become the preferred partner to meet the needs of the Commonwealth and beyond versus become a preferred partner. And the reason I raise that question is, to me, become a preferred partner focuses us more on building up our own capacity to innovate, to partner, to think differently about our economic impact. Become the preferred partner suggests a focus on competing with sister institutions in the Commonwealth. And so I just wondered how you think about that.
Great point, Carly. So the way I've talked about it in all my listening sessions, and I've talked to employers, I've talked to folks in legislators, it's actually a little bit different of a take on it than the two. And as it stands, I can certainly see why you'd ask that question. Let me talk about how I've described it and then get really kind of the point. As I've talked to the group, different groups, I've said, I'd like to become the preferred partner of the Commonwealth. And what does that mean? That means that we are responsive, cost-effective, agile, entrepreneurial, innovative, and all these synonyms. And that because of the great experience partners have with interacting with us, they hope that we are the right partner for a specific issue that they have. And I've often used the example of Miracle on 34th Street, that we want them to come to Macy's first. And we owe it to them to say, to assess their request and say immediately, you know what, we're not as good at that as Virginia Tech or UVA or George Mason or whatever school, it might be the local community college would be. And we're going to send you across the street to Gimbel's. But you can start with us and you can say we're either first known for certain things, and that would be the first thing. Boy, we heard James Madison's doing innovative things in civic engagement. We ought to go to them first. And then they learn other things. And then it's like, wow, we have this problem. And they'd say, I wonder if James Madison has developed expertise in this area or has expertise. We should check with them. And then the third level of are we doing better is we have a problem. I hope that James Madison University can help us with this because it is such a delight. So the focus around that is all of those activities. And my team has an assignment. Anthony's going to take the lead on it, is to creating a robust, comprehensive front door to the institution. Because one of the biggest problems institutions have is they don't know who to call. And they end up calling the wrong person. They say, no, we don't do that. And so this is really about a customer service aspect, and therefore that notion of the preferred partner, because of how we deal with them up front and how we deliver when we determine that we can be their best partner for that particular activity. I appreciate the issues, but I don't know if that answers the question or if that clarifies it further, or if you disagree with that idea too.
It is very clarifying. Thank you. And I note your following areas. I just think because you're not going to always be around to explain it, the absolute nature of that headline, the absolute quality of that language might create issues when you're not there. So I would just ask you to think about it. Is it the preferred partner in our areas of expertise? Is it a preferred partner? Are you comfortable the way it is? I won't wordsmith, but I just ask you and your team to consider that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I will consider that, and I'll take a look at the long-term versions and see how it's mentioned. And you're right, most people won't dig into that. They'll just see the pillars and draw assumptions of it. But let me see if there's a way we can accomplish both. I'm okay with having that feel a little competitive. I don't feel it's as competitive as saying, the best institution in the state, or I think it's a different kind of competition. And I think a little bit of competition is okay, but I appreciate the caution, and our team and I will give that a little more thought.
Okay, thanks.
Great, thank you, Carly. Any other questions about the pillars as they're worded?
Looks like Nicole has her hand up.
Okay, Nicole, because I can't see everybody, so Jim, help me out. Thanks.
Yep, thanks.
And I was trying to be so polite and raise my little yellow hand there. So to Carly's point, and maybe just historical, just kind of as a reminder, first of all, I just want to thank everybody for the work on these, because I think we're really tightening them up, and I feel really good from where we started to where we've landed. So thanks, Terry, for your tutelage and everybody else's kind of guidance on it. When I first started on the board, we weren't preferred partners. We were no partner. We were not making ourselves available at all, really. I look at where we started then and now, and it's exploded. And so I think to let people know that, hey, to be a little aggressive there and say like we're not only in the game, we're going to be the best in the game isn't a bad thing, and it's not a boastful thing, but it's like we really want to compete to be the best. Um, and particularly in the work, workplace environment experiences, I remember hearing complaints of industry coming to the former president and leadership and just being turned down, not even given a chance to come in and talk to them about where they could find new experiences where they could collaborate and problem solve. And so I don't have a problem with this. And, clearly, Carly, like I think, it's if that rubs a wrong way or we need to maybe wordsmith it a little bit, I'm all there. I'm supportive of that. But I think we need to be recognized. I mean, with the R2 designation and a lot of different new opportunities we have now that we didn't have 5 years ago, I think we need to reintroduce ourselves in some way. And that's a nice statement that does that.
Good comments, Nicole. Any other suggested changes with the pillars?
And we're still massaging. You'll see
Okay.
massaging to it as well from our team. We've been
So-
doing a little bit of that.
Yeah, so do I hear a general consensus that we're supportive of the pillars as they are? And we'd like Jim to go back and look at that pillar number 3 and think of some possibilities to massage that some. Does that sound reasonable to everyone? Anybody opposed to that? Okay, you want to move on? Go ahead. Did somebody have a comment?
No, I just said I agree. That sounds good.
Okay, moving on to the guidepost goals. Many of them are repeated, and just like to point out that in the invest in our people, all 4 of those are somewhere else in the body of this. And Jim, I thought was good about there are some repeated goals, but he felt like they connected on each of them, which was made them even stronger. So maybe just take them one at a time and see if there's any comments on the guidepost goals. Jim, do you want to just continue with that preferred partner, or you want to start at the top?
No, let me speak broadly because I don't know that this was really the assignment that the board gave, and this will probably not be on public documents. That's not a secret, but we were asked as we develop guidepost goals to connect them to the pillars, and so it's really just showing that each of the pillars have connections to the various guidepost goals. And one of the things I noticed that we lost when we had the longer view is you had all the guidepost goals at the top. So we're going to reformat that. Chris had this right, and we tried to simplify it. In the process of simplifying it, we lost a little bit. The guidepost goals are laid out in the long document, but we'll get them back into a format. So they're here. There's 11 at the moment, meaning to be kind of the big overarching goals that the institution wants to achieve by 2032. I want to underpin one thing, because not every single guidepost goal is connecting to an individual pillar. As an institution, the strategic plan is really focusing, I would argue, on where we want to sharpen and change or expand or do something strategic. And yet we also want to recognize, without spelling out every single department at the college, why all the contributions everyone does at the college, we want to understand that there's a whole swath of the college or university that are not being fundamentally changed, although everything's going to be revisited. We want to understand that, teaching and everything else that's going on is contributing to things like the student success measures of retention, which leads to philanthropy, which leads to other things. So I just want to acknowledge that these aren't meant to be a one-to-one lineup. So as you take a look at it, now I want to pivot to Terry's earlier point. One of the things that became more and more clear as we're going through the visioning process, and we had great vision chairs, we've had robust feedback from employee groups and faculty that they felt that this was a transparent process. They realize that they're being stretched, but they're excited, but they're invigorated because of the process used. People from across the university have never met, talked to each other. They've learned a lot. So we're strengthening our teams at the same time. But what they brought in is they overlap, they intertwined. We've been trying to come up with a graphic that shows the interdependent nature of all of the goals within the strategic plan, and that they're really closer interacted. And by working in certain areas, we are affecting multiple change measurements across the organization. And that's true in any organization, but it was really pretty stunning. So this column, and what you have is that front page, is just to show you which of the guidepost goals are mapping on directly onto guidepost goals. And on that same page, you will see the current data for that guidepost goal. So where we're at with 2025 data, where we're at with what our goal is for this plan for the 2032, and then what the vision is by the time we reach to 2040 and what that metric should be. I'll take a moment just to highlight that our team over the last couple of weeks have, as we've been talking about a 2030 plan, that in fact we're already halfway through to 2026. And depending on how you want to count that, that's 3.5 or 4.5 years left on the strategic plan, which is really a pretty short time. And so instead we decided to push it out to 2032. And therefore we've also increased some of the measurements, because by then we should have achieved more. Things like 4-year graduation rates is really hard to have big impact on in a 3.5 or 4.5 year period, because the students are either already here or about to come in. The other reason is that Nick has pointed out that the fundraising plan, the capital or the comprehensive campaign, will be done in 2 phases as well, with that overarching, as we'll be discussing, up to $1 billion that we need to raise in philanthropy by 2040 to help facilitate and underwrite these goals. His plan is, with the advice of counsel, is to split that. And so maybe end up with, say, for an example, a $400 million campaign for the first phase and 600 for the second phase. It creates a natural break. So it aligns with what would be a comprehensive campaign, and then kind of a 2-year cooling off period before we relaunch that second phase, which would also go with the next capital campaign. So things are really fitting together well. And again, you'll see the targets that are there. There are additional targets if you go to the long form for some of the guidepost goals that aren't quite as clear. They're on that front page as well. And we're going to get you one sheet that lists them all with all of the targets. So it's just easier for the board to work with by the time we meet on Monday. I'd be happy to answer questions on either the alignment or the goals. And then, as Terry said, on page 2 of that same document, you'll see a sampling of the strategic initiatives and some of the risk assessments. I refer you back, I apologize, to the overall strategic planning calendar. We're actually ahead of schedule. It doesn't feel that way. And the implementation teams are actually, they're beginning the work on implementation teams. The vision teams have actually laid out a lot of the implementation strategies. Some of them are listed here, and we're going to get even more detail. So by the time we get to the retreat, I can refer to them if there are questions and, reference some of the early work and some of the early things that are already occurring. So I think we'll be well prepared for Monday. So let me take a breath, see if you have any questions about the targets. We certainly welcome your feedback, questions, and advice on the targets or anything within that first page.
Any questions of Jim?
Carly has her hand up.
Yes, Carly.
Sorry, I don't always want to be the one that jumps in first here. So if someone else has one, I'm happy to wait, but. So Jim, I really applaud you and the team for adding the 5th pillar of invest in our people. And just something to think about, and it may be that it's in the level of detail that we can't see. But I do think it's important to have very specific metrics around investing in our people. Enhancing employee well-being is one of your strategic initiatives, aligning faculty and staff workload, sunsetting, those are all great strategic initiatives. And so I'm hoping that you have or will build some metrics that capture those specifically. Of course, it all rolls up to student retention eventually, but I think if we don't start to track whether or not people feel invested in, then this will just naturally over time become less of a priority. And as you say, without our people motivated and invested in, we will not achieve any of these objectives.
Thank you. And and we're still working on how best to display things and use the right language and make it clear. This middle column on alignment with the guidepost goals really needs to evaporate after the board feels as though we kept them together, because the invest in our people, the metrics you're seeing are really metrics around the guidepost goals and not necessarily around the category. We just listed them there to be easy, and it isn't. It's confusing. So none of the metrics on the left side of the page are actually directly connected to a pillar. They're connected to the guidepost goals that are necessary to support it. And so most of what we've displayed here, what are those ways we're going to be able to afford to invest in our people? And we know and they're inverse, right? If our people are compensated and are happy and doing well, our retention rate's going to go. And we want people to see that connection. And that as our retention rates grow, we have more revenue. It's far easier to keep a customer than find a new customer, in addition to it being the right thing to do and the purpose of our mission. And so these things were really different ways that we could fund it. And the most up-to-date version of the long document, I don't think we've shared that one yet, David, on the language from today. Or did that go out?
Not from today.
No. So by Monday, you will see at the bottom of the plan, how do we fund the plan? And we're going to be laying out 6 different ways that we intend to find, starting with internal realignment and resources, philanthropy, and it goes down the list, including going back to Richmond. And instead of, and this was the feedback I've gotten from legislators and others, they're tired of James Madison coming up and complaining that we are the lowest funded school in the state. They know that. And like philanthropists, legislators often say, you know what, we don't get excited about putting money into a hole to fix a problem. We want to invest in some return. We want to, what are you going to accomplish if we provide you that funds other than general things? So we're going to reframe this and saying, look, here's this exciting series of strategic initiatives, our promises, and we believe it's worthy of investment and we can return to the Commonwealth with it. And you're leveraging investments from internal reallocations, from philanthropy, from corporate partnerships, from additional work in our grant resources that we wrapped up. And, this is the first time we just developed this a little bit more clearly this morning after some feedback from the rector and vice rector around how we're going to pay for things. We're going to be right up front. And so I'm going to test fly this, but we'll talk about it more on Monday, is if all of these areas are doing their part, we also may need to recognize that we have a little bit of capacity on tuition. And I'm going to lay out there as a recommendation. It's a plan, not a promise. We're not binding future boards, and it'll have caveats depending on state policy, an additional 1% tuition increase in each year of the plan going up to 2032 to help ensure that we can do these things. We're 11th lowest in overall tuition fees. It's not my goal to be up in the top half, but I think there's some room. It makes the plan more realistic, and each year the board can hold my feet to the fire and say, show me, President Schmidt, how have you reallocated internal funds? Show me how you're sunsetting programs. Show me how you're moving these other markers. Show me the philanthropy. Show me the corporate partnerships. How are we doing in grant activities to support this activity? And I think that we will make a compelling case, and it's realistic and reasonable. But again, that'll be part of the last part of the plan that says, look, here's everything we're hoping to do, and here's how we're going to go about the business of paying for it. And we can comment on campus development and housing. I can talk about some of that today as well. But your point, I'm sorry, but your point, Carly, I'm sorry, is really excellent. I think we have talked a little bit about what some of the metrics to know if we're doing well with that. Mm-hmm. One of them that was suggested was, employee turnover. And there's actually a point of healthy turnover, but there are other measurements that are out there that we can put in to see how we're doing and what's the impact of that. And we're still identifying those. We won't probably have those by Monday, but it'll be part of the implementation teams. So thank you.
Jim, this is Terry. Got a question. If you have the pillars on the left, I would think that the deliverables would be affiliated with the pillars. So, for example, the third goal, become a preferred partner or the preferred partner. How do you measure that? I would think that would be the kind of measurable goal that you would put. So we know here's the 5 pillars, here's the 12 key measures of these pillars, and then you have additional goals that are with all the guideposts. Could you walk me through maybe how we'll see that differently Monday? I might have misunderstood you.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, Terry. And again, I apologize because we're still working on the right way to portray and format this. So all of the metrics you're seeing are attached to the 11 key guidepost goals.
Okay.
And they're intertwined. And that's what this does show is the pillars, the big areas of thrust that the plan includes. These are the big 4, 5 now emphases. And we will know if we're achieving these in part because of the big guidepost goals. That'll be kind of the big dashboard, the ones we're focusing on. But then there are a lot of sub-metrics, and those are still, some are developed and some are still being developed. Some of them are in the long version. So for the preferred partner, Anthony has put forward some pieces around economic impact for the university as one of the measurements. And so there will be more measurements, but the big overarching measurements are the 11 guidepost goals. And again, they're integrated, and that's what the sheet does show, spread across the 4 pillars. Almost all of them have some impact. Well, the 5 pillars now. Does that make sense, Terry?
Yeah, it does. When I counted the guidepost goals, there's really, I think, 12 that aren't repeated. So it ends up being 12. I'm still confused a little bit on what Carly's comment was. Invest our people. I would think turnover rate would be the measure, or become the preferred partner would be number of partnerships with businesses. Those would be the kind of things I would think the board would want to see that connects these. And these are like the sub goals. So that's what I'm trying to understand. What as a board, what we need to approve on Monday, or at least have a draft to consider on Monday for approval in April. And that's the missing piece.
Terry, sorry to interrupt. Jim, could I take a try at what I thought you said? Only because if it'll help me understand and maybe help answer Terry's question. What I think I understand you to say, and look, we all understand when you're trying to format things to go on one page, it gets a little hairy. So you have our sympathy. You're trying to cram a lot of data in a few pages. But I think what I understood you to say is these guidepost goals are the overarching highest order results that we want to achieve as a result of our 5-pillar push. Underneath those overarching highest level results that we want to achieve, there are specific metrics for each of these 5 pillars that you are working on and that we will see, all of which roll up to the strategic guidepost goals, which are interconnected across the 5 pillars.
I wish I could have said it as simply.
But I mean, that is what you're telling me.
That's correct. That is correct.
So I'm at least comfortable if that's what you're telling us, that next order of review on Monday, we'll see the specific metrics. But this is a rolling up document that says we started top down with pillars and overarching results. We are driving to more specific metrics, and they will all roll up and connect.
They will, and we won't have every single one.
Understood.
For Monday. That'll happen with implementation, but the broad ones are there. And we'll revisit the guidepost goals to see if there's an appropriate one, particularly for that last one, because we weren't really contemplating it in that way. But yes, they roll up. And the guidepost goals are meant to be interrelated across the pillars. And that's what that document does show. Chris has his hand up. I don't know if you have something else to add to that, Chris.
Yeah, I just wanted to help clarify a little bit. And Carly, your points are very much in line with kind of the overarching structure. I think what we're trying to do then is that next level is those strategies, those strategic initiatives are where the next level of metrics will be. It's not necessarily like the guidepost goals are tied, as we said, to the pillars, but they're really that overarching framework. And then the pillars are more of an organizational framework to be able to describe the whole breadth of strategic initiatives that we're working towards. Each of those initiatives will then have metrics associated with their success. And so it may not be where there's another layer at the pillar level, but there will be, you could easily do this where you take all the kind of key metrics that describe our success on the initiatives and call those the pillar level metrics.
Right.
But we'll have I mean, we are working on that, and we, as President Jim said, we'll have some for Monday, and we'll continue to kind of revise those and do that as we move forward.
I think Carly clarified, and you've answered my question. I guess I'm looking at the preferred partner, and I'm thinking, is it possible we could achieve all of those guidepost goals linked to the preferred partner and still not be a preferred partner?
Yes,
And that's
absolutely.
right. So that's what. So maybe you're saying on Monday we may not have the full list, but we'll have some of those more clearly defined.
So, and if you go on to that next page, which you're trying to stay away from, and I'm holding up the large page.
Right.
The next page shows the initiatives that are more tied to the pillars, and as Chris was saying, then there's going to be individual metrics attached to that. I will say one of the things I'm working to try to avoid. I had one institution 30 years ago that had like 534 metrics.
Right.
Then none of them are important. It is important to figure out what's most important. And we are really challenging ourselves because we could throw too many metrics up and we're challenging ourselves. Does that really show that? Or is that a good number to hit? You know, and so like the employee turnover was like, well, what's a healthy amount of turnover? And actually we're doing well, but that's still not the right answer. So we need to figure out a different way to really get at the nugget of that. Because to your point, Terry, we could achieve all those and still not achieve the overall goal. So we're trying to be very thoughtful, and that's where Chris and his team, and we have a number of really bright people who are good at helping to tune those to make sure they actually deliver what we're hoping for.
So we manage expectations from the board members. You know, I'll pull out people that haven't said anything, either Steve Smith or Jeff or Jack White. You know, what would be the ideal number to not exceed for you? I'm just trying to set expectations for Jim. Any thoughts? I have my own mind, but I'd rather hear from you.
I'll just speak. I don't know that I have a particular number I'd limit it to. Again, whatever's appropriate in Jim's mind.
Jim, do you have a number in mind that you're thinking?
I do. I mean, I'm just saying it should not exceed 50 measurements. If we have more than 50, I think we won't be able to give them the attention. So I'm going to challenge us to be thoughtful. And if I can get them actually closer to 35, but I know there are a lot of initiatives and we want to make sure we can measure whether or not the initiative is right. What we might find is, again, similar to we've had with the pillars, we may have multiple activities we're doing. So we might have 5 activities and we're all working in towards one key metric that we're hoping that these 5 in concert can help affect. And I think that's what makes it for a stronger plan.
I do. I agree. In my business parts, we've not had more than 12.
Yeah.
As your key ones. You can have a lot more, but really like the most important 12. But you know, I'm open to what you come up with, but I think 30 even is too hard to really control.
Well, and Terry, I think we'll end up probably with 12 of the guidepost goals. And then again, I would like to, but there will be some other measurements. They're just not going to be overarching.
So for the board members, you know, we've kind of worked on the pillars. We've looked at the guidepost goals. were there any of the targets that Jim and his team have set that you had an exception to? I mean, I've looked at them and I have some thoughts, but I'd just like to hear from the group. Do you feel like generally they're what you expected? Do you have questions about some or clarifications that he could provide? And it's
I had one question about the new research centers of excellence. Maybe Anthony can give us a ballpark figure what we're looking at exactly for the reason. I know we've got a lot of different centers already, and I'm just getting a better drill down on what that'll mean. Thanks.
Yeah, Jeff, we haven't had time to really talk about specifics. The original plan, I guess 4 years ago now, was to introduce 2 about every 3 years, give them some sustained funding for 3 years to roll into being grant funded. That was the plan as of 3 or 4 years ago. I think once we get to the details of it, that may need to be tweaked. But that is the type of funding that we used in the past. And we have 2 research centers. One was CARE, the Center for Advancement and Research and Education, and then AAAD. And so those were our first 2 research centers. One was a new center, one was an existing center moving to a research center. And so there was a process by which we did that, and there was sustained funding. And we were supposed to redo that again this year, but we paused and waited for this strategic plan. And then we'll need to have a lot of conversations around whether that's the right approach to go to do it again. The goal originally was to have about 6 research centers at the end of a 10-year period, but we'll have to reevaluate after the plan. Jeff, does that answer your question in general?
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions about the specific guidepost goals or targets from the team?
Go ahead, Trina. No, you got a question. I was going to go on to a different topic.
Okay, just one thing. Jim did explain the 4-year graduation rate to me, and it really made sense. But I know on this slide, it might look like, wow, only 68% of the kids graduate in 4 years. So Jim, could you just elaborate on that so everybody understands it?
Yeah, I'd be pleased to. And I've identified that for the team to take a look at, particularly in the long run, and maybe we have an alternative measurement. Every time I brought this up in nearly 40 years, I always have to explain what it is and what it isn't. So this is a nationally accepted term, and the only way you count a 4-year grad is if they came in as a first-time, full-time freshman and did 4 years from that date that they graduate from your institution. And you can only count the ones that make that deal. So if a student comes here, gets homesick in 2 weeks, has a boyfriend, girlfriend problem in the first 2 weeks, we never get to count them. Maybe they moved here from out of state and it's just too far away from mom and dad, or again, the boyfriend, girlfriend. Certainly have issues of student medical issues, parent medical issues, financial crisis, things happen. We're never going to get to count them, but that's what the measurement is. I will tell you that and that's still an important metric because it allows for a national standard of comparing how many stay with you. And that's a reflection of retention and all those things. An important, I would argue, an equally important measurement is time to degree. And so that has the same student, except those who are stayed with you. How long does it take them to graduate? Because a lot of people see 68% and they're assuming 32% of the students after 4 years are still wandering around James Madison University doing something, but not graduating. And that isn't what that number means. Time to degree, by the way, and Bob or Chris could probably do it, but I think we're right around 4.1 year. Is that right? Or maybe a shade under, Chris?
4.06.
I thought it was under that. Thank you, Bob. And part of that, I will just acknowledge, some students are coming in with credits coming, high school, college earned credits, other exams, advanced placement, et cetera. So, that has its own skew to it as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. If there's no other questions on the first page, Jim, would you like 10 after 4? I want to make sure we get to the key points that you want to stress. Do you want to go to the second page or do you want to walk through the Madison Promise? How would you like to go next?
Well, what I would encourage folks to do, I think the Madison Promise document is the long version. It lays out the strategy. It would we couldn't walk through it in 20 minutes. So I guess
Right.
for those who've had time, and we're on tight timelines, if there are things you wanted to raise or ask questions about, either myself or members of the team could answer them so we can try to be better prepared for Monday.
Are there any questions or comments or clarifications that you'd like on the long document? None? All right, well, I think we're in good shape then, Jim.
Carrie, I apologize. When you say the long document, I'm not sure I'm tracking with you, but I did have, if now is a good.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask a question or make a comment about the risk assessment. If I can
Yeah.
wait, if now is not a good time.
Now's a good time. Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, I really appreciate this column on risk assessment. I think it's very, very helpful and well done. Something I'd ask you and the team to think about for Monday and beyond. In looking at those risks, my initial conclusion from reading that is that while the 2040 targets represent a credible future state, that the risk assessment suggests to me that there may be some fine-tuning on prioritization for the 2032 targets. So when I look at the 2032 targets, what I think I'm fundamentally seeing is equivalent progress on every single guidepost goal for every single pillar at about the same pace over 5 years. And given that set of risks, I would just ask you to think about whether that's realistic or whether we need to, you and your team need to think about a little bit finer order of prioritization, where some come sooner and some come later, but not all can be on the same pace over the next 5 years.
Thank you. And, and as you heard, we just moved the time post to 32. So, and you're right. And
That's
there's a
5
couple
years.
things. There's 5.5 years. It isn't
5.5 years.
So there's not, a couple things. We are going to keep fine tuning those right up until the board meeting in April. So you'll see an adjustment by a percentage or two. And I will acknowledge some of them were a little arbitrary. But there are a couple things, right? You would think you could achieve a little bit faster in the second half, and which isn't true. There are some things that we can achieve more in the first. I'll use retention. Every fraction of a percent above where we're at now gets harder, because the chance that somebody gets homesick or has a boyfriend, girlfriend, or health issue, it's harder to get as you get closer to 100. And I know you recognize that, and that's how I'm hearing the advice. And there are some things where, if we want to have half our students living on campus, it just takes a while to build dormitories. So that will be one of those metrics, and that's not, I don't think, on one of the big guidepost goals, but there would be an example where that'll all of a sudden, as the residence halls get built, I believe we will fill them almost immediately. And so I appreciate the observation, and my team will take a look at that. Try to see if there's adjustments we'd make by Monday, but I'd love to talk more about it Monday, and we'll keep making adjustments to these up until the deadline for the board packet in April. But
And Jim, I think
you're kind of onto us, so I feel a little embarrassed by that.
No, I think it's a point well taken, and I think it's more operational. I think Carly's comment is, if you had a Gantt chart, maybe some of these start year 2 or some start year 5, and your point's great. You can't meet the 40% on campus until you build the building. So, some of those will start later.
Well, and yes, and setting aside the metrics, the numbers, and the structure of this, I guess my my larger point, which I know you're thinking about, my larger point would be this is it's a tremendously ambitious agenda, as you've said, and as we've asked for. It is a tremendous amount of change. And organizations, realistically, every organization, no matter how enthusiastic and ambitious, every organization, change is harder than it appears it's going to be when you start out. It's just hard. And so I think, I know this will come up in the implementation plans as well, but having an ambitious but realistic set of priorities, particularly in the first 2 or 3 years, where you want people encouraged by progress, not discouraged by failure or setback. I'm sure you're thinking about that. I would just ask you to continue to think about that and share how you assess those priorities against those risks as we move into final approval.
And thank you, Carly. I owe you a glass of wine or something because my team is pretty fried. And I've had to assure my team that we're not going to implement every single initiative this year. We're gonna have to put all the initiatives up, and we've started this work. It's like, okay, how much can academic affairs, and Bob obviously isn't going to lead all of them. It's going to be deans and other people within that, and we're going to have to figure out, well, wait a second, so and so is going to get really pinched because they got 9 initiatives, and that's just not reasonable. So I, for one, want to just thank you for the observation, and just in case it isn't clear, right? So our plan is for 2032, while still setting that vision for 2040. There'll be a new strategic plan, ideally, that launches the second half of that, that'll reflect where we're at and figure out, okay, how are we doing and how do we move that to the next level? And that will be a 2031, 2032 kind of activity.
Right, exactly. And thank you. And of course, as you put everything up on a board and say we can't do everything all at once, all that ends up getting reflected in the metrics.
Yes.
And metrics drive behavior. So I think it's hard to finalize the metrics without understanding the prioritization. That's all I'm saying.
There.
Jim, if you're okay, I'd like to take the last 10 minutes and kind of do round robin from the chairs of the different committees, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Dave, you've got kind of the lens of the athletics. Is there anything that you feel like you want, that you thought would be in here that's not in here, or anything that we need to address for Monday?
No, I think everything's included. I think we're in a good spot from the athletics perspective.
Okay, great. Steve, from the finance committee, you're going to give us about $20 billion so we can get all these things done?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I do think there's some, a few unanswered questions about, the funding and so forth and so on, where some of that comes from. But I think that's a work in progress as we go forward.
Okay, well, thank you. And Jack, from a governance committee, let me go to Nicole first. Nicole, from the academic affairs committee, is there anything that you want to make sure that Jim and his team have before Monday so they're better prepared?
I think we're in a good place, and I'd defer to Bob if he thinks there's anything we're missing, but I think it looks pretty good.
Okay.
No, I think we're in good shape.
All right. Thank you, Bob. And then Michael's not here, but Carly, you frequently have led the advancement committee. Is there anything that you, from a philanthropy lens and an advancement, that you'd like to just make sure that we have ready for Monday, or are you good?
No, I think we're good. I think, as Steve says, there are questions about how to get on this kind of trajectory and what that takes. But I think there's nothing missing from these documents, I don't think.
Okay, great. And Dave, from your different lens on master planning, do you feel like you have what you need to share with the board on Monday, or are there any questions that you might have since we've got everybody together?
No, I think the master plan is all set and in a good spot to share with everybody. Obviously, we will have questions, but I think we're in a good spot to move forward with that, with what we got together.
Great. And then Jack, from governance committee, you and Suzanne have the task of getting everything together for us for Monday, and today's Thursday. Is there anything that you need from the team or from the board members to get ready for Monday?
No, nothing that we need, but I laughed a little because Carly said, I don't think anything's missing. And what I have been thinking when I've been trying to figure out how to package this so we can have a productive Monday is, I don't know if you guys remember that movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once. That's what we're doing. We're doing everything everywhere all at once at JMU. But we're doing this in an orderly fashion, and we've got good ideas on how to make sure that we maintain accountability, like Terry saying, 50 might be too many, and understanding that we need to manage it in a way so that the accountability that we've had through this process maintains through the duration of the execution of this plan. So I think we're in a good place, and Monday is going to be extraordinarily productive.
Great. Thank you so much. And Jeff, from an audit committee and also your concerns over risk, do you feel like we've addressed what you were hoping to achieve today?
Yes, absolutely. There's a couple things that Jim and Dave and I talked about last week with Tom Galati about the foundation of our pillars. Somehow I'd like to see if we could weave in the ethics part of it, the sharing of particularly with the staff and beyond the students. But Becky had some solid input there. I think it'd be helpful to add. But from the risk perspective, I think definitely we've assessed that, and then had a meeting earlier this week with Tawana specifically about our debt. And I think we're in good shape there overall in terms of our capacity to incur additional debt and meeting the debt we've already obligated ourselves. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jeff. From student affairs, Tim, I know you're on the call, so I'm just going to have you speak for me. Do you have everything that you need, or is there any questions that you have from a student perspective?
No, we're in great shape. I think the team has worked incredibly hard to get to this point. I appreciate all the board feedback throughout, and I think we're in really good shape. I'm looking forward to Monday's conversation.
Great. It'll be great to have you there. Just one thing that I did mention to Jim, and it'll be in the details, the distribution of out-of-state, in-state students. I think that'll help drive the financials and international students, so he will address that. Have I hit all the committee chairs? I just want to make sure I've rounded with everyone. Before I go to Suzanne, Suzanne, this will be a big meeting on Monday, and we want to be prepared for our April board meeting. From what you've heard today, and then you've heard from the different chairmen, what insights do you have that you want to make sure that we're ready for on Monday?
I think this discussion we've had today has been critical to get us ready for Monday. I know I went into the university today for a meeting regarding the presidential inaugural coming on the 8th, and they were hustling out of the room because they've been working today to work. The biggest thing that I think we need is I'd like to see the long plan, not on Monday, but prior to Monday. I've asked David and President Jim to have it printed out for us so that it's in front of us, so we're not hunting for it, on the portal or in an email or whatever. But if we have it so that we have gone through it thoroughly, each board member, before we arrive, I think it will be help jumpstart the conversation, and everybody marks up, makes notes, and comes prepared to ask pointed questions of Jim. And, it's going to just make our conversation work better, and we can get down to the nuts and bolts of setting the guardrails that the board feels comfortable moving forward with adopting this plan in April, knowing that not everything is completely defined, but having an understanding that we're not going to raise tuition by 15% to achieve X, Y, and Z in the plan. You know, those are the type things that as a board member and a fiduciary responsible person to the Commonwealth, we need to just make sure that Jim's bold plan is achievable without, you know, making JMU unaffordable for the students who want to attend our university.
Good point. So Suzanne, to your point, when would be a reasonable time for all the board members to receive this so that we can read it before Monday's meeting? I mean, we need to have a time, because if we don't,
I would say I know that the university is closed tomorrow. So, you know, if we could get what you've got to date tomorrow or tonight before you leave, recognizing that y'all might fine tune it over the weekend a little bit, but at least we have what you've got at as close as possible. Then if you tweak it a little bit, whatever you all bring to us on Monday morning at 9 a.m. is close to what we've already received.
It shall be done.
Okay, that's great. I think for us, we feel like now we've got some substance that we've digested, but this only represents about a third of the board members. So there's going to be a lot of people seeing many things for the first time, and they may have questions. Maybe in your email or whatever, how you send it to us, Jim and David, you might, refer to if there's specific things regarding, academics or athletics or something, and they want to refer to the board member that chairs that committee. That might help diffuse some of the questions so they're not all channeling to the same people, if that's helpful. So just in wrapping it up, you've done a lot of work. The team has obviously really been engaged, and you've engaged a large audience. So I think to Carly's point earlier, people are really excited about it. They're excited on one hand, and they're a little fearful on the other hand. And the magnitude of this, coupled with our financial plan and our master plan, is a lot to digest. So I look forward to how you present it on Monday to kind of make it digestible. And if there's anything that you need from us to help with that, Jim, please let us know. Just reflecting our two number one responsibilities of the board is hire an effective CEO for the president for the university and hold them accountable. And secondly is developing the strategic plan. And I think it's not just developing, but it's endorsing the strategic plan that you've got from the bottom up. And I feel really good about where we are today. Jim, do you have any closing comments, and we could leave time for other questions if there are any?
I will only say that someone introduced it as Jim's bold plan. It's really everybody here, but the language will then need to shift to our bold plan, because you all will ask all the questions and you'll have your marks all over it. And in April, we move forward together. So thank you all. This has been a great, robust conversation. Yeah, very, very helpful. Any closing comments or questions from any of the board members? All right, and Jim, in addition to Tim and Bob, who else from your staff is on? Because I can't see anyone. Who's online with me, or who's going to be there Monday? Who's online with you? So we have Duran Allen, who's one of our co-chairs of the strategic planning exercise. You've seen Chris or heard from Chris. You've got Bob. Yep. Tim. Tawana is on the phone, and Melinda is on the phone as well. And I know you know this, but later this summer you will get the a campaign plan from Nick, and Melinda, once these strategic plans are doing a separate enrollment plan, will then be crafted to fit in that. And so that'll be plans that the board will see summer and fall. But it's really remarkable that you have all these plans, everything everywhere all at once. And if you can pull it off, it's really the strongest way to do planning. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to say thank you to each one of you that you might be on the phone, or maybe you didn't say anything, but we really are grateful for the thought. I forgot Patrice, sorry. Sorry, I forgot Patrice. Not just you, but all of your teams that have put it forward, all of the good work. So I look forward to a healthy discussion on Monday. And thank you, Jack White and Suzanne, for organizing it. All right, with that, we have 1 minute to go, so I think we can sign off unless you have any other comments, Jim.
Anthony, you get no love.
Anthony.
Oh,
Sure,
and,
everyone.
and
Jennifer-
and Jennifer too. I forgot Jennifer. I didn't see her face, so.
Thanks to
your
all the
staff.
staff
There
Yes,
we
that
go.
that are
have
on it.
put
Everybody.
this together.
Greatly. I just wanted to acknowledge them, especially if I couldn't see them on the camera, that they were there. So thanks a lot. You guys have a great afternoon, and we look forward to receiving something from you towards the end of the day, which is almost now. So hopefully soon. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everybody.
Thanks, Terry.
Bye.
Thank you.